Hey guys, it's Devin from Baka, and for today's deck profile, I actually have heroes, if you couldn't tell by the thumbnail. The thing about this is Max's deck that I'm going to showcase for you guys, and we had originally planned on meeting up and him giving me the deck so that I could showcase it to you guys. However, our work schedules were kind of like clashing the last couple weeks, so I just decided to go ahead and build it in one of the online simulators, and I'm going to go ahead and showcase that for you today. So if you like this video, we have another deck profile up. It's my zombie deck profile, and if this video gets enough likes, we'll do a remote duel between the two to show off the capabilities of both of them. So let us know if you'd like to see more content like that, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So here for you today, I have the hero deck that Max uses. And I know looking at this, it can be a little bit contentious because I know that the hero card ratios are a heavily debated thing, but I will do my best to explain the thought process behind how we came to terms with this build. I have to say that this build is very tailored to Max's play style, and we're even considering adding a second copy of Honest Neos. I'll just go ahead and say that right now. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and get started. So the first card we have up is Destiny Hero Plasma. One of the most powerful boards that this deck can make is Plasma plus Dark Law. Because it shuts off your opponent's abilities. It's a one-sided skill drain alongside one-sided Macrocosmos plus a hand rip, and that actually is enough to stop a lot of boards because it's really hard to get over something with 1900 attack and then another monster with 2400 attack. So when in doubt, like if you can't combo off, like Dark Law plus Plasma is a pretty decent board. Yeah, there's not much else to say about that. Honest Neos is a really good hand trap for this deck specifically because as a quick effect, you can just discard this card and then target one hero monster on the field. It gains 2500 attack until the end of this turn, and so that can be used in the main phase. That can be used during the battle phase, and if you wanted to, you could use it during the end phase. I don't know why you would, but the thing is, like, there's like no wrong time to use it. Typically, Max uses it to close out games, or like as a defensive option if he's being attacked and he needs his monster for the next turn. So yeah, this is really good. And like I said, he's considering putting in a second one. And as for what he would take out, it would likely be either one copy of Ferris or one copy of Fusion Destiny. But again, both of those are up to player preference. Next up is 2 Destiny Hero Malicious. That's just standard. It'd be 3 if we could run 3, but as you can see, this nice fat 2 right here. Next up, we have 3 copies of Vision Hero Ferris. So this is the first one that I know is a contentious ratio amongst hero players. I have seen a lot of players who like 1. I've seen a lot of players who like 2, and I know a lot of players that like 3. Max happens to be one of those players that likes 3. He feels that as long as his consistency is, as good as it can be, his deck will perform well. And to an extent, I agree. However, you don't have to run this. I do know that while I was testing with this deck, I often sided out the third one in order to fit in, as like one of the cards I sided out to fit in some super polys. But anyway, moving on. We have Evil Hero Adusted Gold along with the Dark Calling package for Malicious Bane, and that's just a really good way to that's a really difficult board presence to take care of, and that's all facilitated just by Adusted Gold. And I have to say, I have noticed that he'll use it usually as a backup plan where if his main play gets stopped, he'll just use the Evil Hero engine. And I have to say, I think that's the way to use it, not as the primary. But, you know, again, that's one of those player preference things. Next up is 3 copies of Stratos, because 3 copies of Rhoda or a couple copies of Twin Twister / Harpy's Feather Duster, you kind of can't beat it. And the spicy tech that goes along with this is Masked Hero Blast, because you don't always want to be stuck with Stratos on board. So Masked Hero Blast, he says, if this card is special summoned, you can target one face-up monster your opponent controls. Its attack becomes half its current attack. Once per turn, you can pay 500 life points and target one spell or trap your opponent controls and return it to the hand. So, it's just more spell trap removal. The only thing that doesn't out in it of itself is like Mystic Mine. But yeah, I mean, Stratos is Stratos. It was on the ban list for far too long. I think it's a really strong card. But moving on. We have Destiny Hero Celestial as part of the Destiny Hero package. And this card, when this card declares an attack, you can target a face-up spell your opponent controls, destroy it, and if you do, inflict 500 damage to your opponent. It doesn't come up too often, however, that can clear a field spell. And while you have no cards in hand, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card and one Destiny Hero monster from your graveyard and draw 2 cards. You can only use each effect, you can only use that last effect of Celestial once per turn. So that doesn't really matter because you only run it at 1. And what I find is if your Plasma gets outed or if you've already used your Malicious for your combo, and you have Celestial in the grave, you can just go ahead and banish the 2 cards, and then draw 2, and that typically helps you dig deeper. That's a good mid-game play that not a lot of people realize they have, which is kind of crazy. And like I said, his first effect helps outfield spells or continuous spells and traps. Continuous spells. But yeah, Celestial is probably one of my favorite Destiny Hero cards, and I think it's a pretty good inclusion in any Destiny Hero deck. If you didn't like this, though, you could run Dynatag, and if you couldn't afford the Evil Hero engine, this could Dusted Gold could be a Dynatag, and Dark Calling could be, you could just main the Super Poly engine as well if you wanted to do that. Anyway, moving on, we have Liquid Soldier and Solid Soldier. So what Liquid Soldier does is when this card is normal summoned, you can target one level 4 or lower hero monster, and that could be any hero. So that could be your Celestial, that could be your Vion, that could be your Increase. I think that's everything that's not actually a native hero, a native elemental hero. Yeah. So anything but himself, which is fine because you only run 1. And then you could special summon it. If this card is used as fusion material for a hero monster and sent to the graveyard or banished, you can draw 2 cards, then discard 1. So you can only use 1 elemental hero Liquid Soldier effect per turn, and only once that turn. So they're both a hard once per turn, and you could pick 1, and you can only use 1. But they're both very strong effects, and if you wait, like say you leave Liquid Soldier on the field, and then use him as a fusion material for the next turn, you can end up getting both effects. But Liquid Soldier is very good. I think Solid Soldier is just a little bit better. And again, if you couldn't afford the Evil Hero engine, instead of Dark Calling, you could run a second Solid Soldier. Anyway, when this card is normal summoned, you can special summon 1 level 4 or lower hero from your hand. So he's very similar to Liquid Soldier, except he pulls 1 from hand rather than graveyard. And then you could target 1 hero monster in your if this card is sent to the graveyard from your monster zone to the graveyard by a spell effect, and that's any spell effect, you can target 1 hero monster in your graveyard except Solid Soldier and special summon it in defense position. So that facilitates more combo plays. So if you use him Diffusion, if you use him as Mass Change, if you use him as Super Poly, like anything, or Miracle Fusion, anything like that. Actually, no, not Miracle Fusion, sorry, I lied. So anything like that, you can just go ahead and special summon something so you can continue comboing off. Next up is 2 Shadow Mist and 2 Vion. These 2 don't need much explaining. They used to be 3-ofs But now that we have extenders such as Solid and Liquid, as well as 3 Stratos and Ferris and Vion. No, yeah, Ferris and Increase. We don't really need 3 of each. But if you're unfamiliar with what these cards do, Shadow Mist says if this card is special summoned, you can add 1 change quick play spell card from your hand, from your deck to your hand, which is mass change always. And if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add 1 hero monster from your deck to your hand. You can only use 1 of those effects per turn and once that turn. So, like, it's a hard once per turn, and you can only use 1 effect per turn. Shadow Mist really is what revived the hero deck, because I remember it went from a really bad fusion strategy to a pretty decent rogue contender, and even meta at some points. But yeah, so again, this has been Max's favorite deck since he was in like 2nd grade. So the hero deck really just speaks to him. So he's had every incarnation of this deck. Next up is 2 copies, like I said, 2 copies of Vion. If this card is normal or special summon, you could send 1 hero monster from your deck to the graveyard. And typically you want to send Malicious so that you can banish it and summon another Malicious, or you can use Cross Crusader. But anyway, Vision Hero Vion, when you can only use this effect of Vision Hero Vion once per turn. So if you have a second one and you normal summon that one after special summoning the first, you can't use this effect again. Once per turn, you can banish 1 hero monster from your graveyard and add 1 poly from your deck to your hand. Sorry, polymerization. Now, it's important to note that that effect is not a hard once per turn. It's not even a soft once per turn. So if you did run more than 1, you could, like if you had another one on the field, you could use that effect a second time. But as you can see in our deck list, we only run 1 poly. Next up is the 2 increase. Again, Max likes having both of them. But the effect that really matters is you could tribute 1 hero monster, special summon this card. If this card is treated as a continuous spell, you can, continuous trap, you can tribute 1 hero monster, special summon this card. If this card is special summoned from the spell trap zone, you could special summon 1 level 4 or lower vision hero monster from your deck. So he's really good for facilitating more of your combos. So typically something like that you would do would be to activate Ferris's effect, discarding a hero, preferably a Malicious, and then to special summon itself, then setting the increase into the spell trap zone, tributing the Ferris, to special summon the increase, to special summon a Vion, and from there you could either discard a Shadow Mist, or if you didn't have the Malicious, you could discard the Malicious, and then you can go ahead and either reach for your poly or continue comboing using Malicious, by going into Cross Crusader using these 2. So it is a very complicated combo, but it does give heroes like almost an immunity to hand traps, because by having that combo extension, they don't die to just 1. Nowadays, I realize that heroes need 2 hand traps to take down, at minimum. Moving on, we have everybody's favorite, Ash Blossom and Joy Spring. Don't ask me why these are different artworks in the builder. That is not the case in real life. But, you know, feat supremacy, so here we are. Moving on. We have Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit at 2. This is a really good card because a lot of monsters activate on field, and not a lot of them in the current meta have destruction protection. It doesn't stop the effects from going off. This also stops spell and trap cards as well. It doesn't stop the effect unless it's a continuous, but it does really come in clutch when you just need to get the body off of the board. Like, so if you know that they're going to go for, like, say a Romulus, you can pop the second material so that now they're just stuck there with, like, a striker, because then they can't even go into a guard dragon using that. So I do find that Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit's a really good card. Next up is the triple E-Call. It's a Rhoda for heroes. It's so good. And there's not much else to say about it. You just search out an elemental hero from your deck to your hand. Next up is a Hero Lives. If you control no face-up monsters, pay half your life points and special summon one level 4 or lower elemental hero monster from your deck. So the thing about this card is, to a new player, it seems like it's pretty bad because you give up half your life points for one air quote weak monster. But to someone who's familiar with heroes, you realize that this card absolutely needed to be at 1 because of the fact that it's so powerful. You can just activate this card and bring out a Shadow Mist, activating her special summon effect to add a change, and now you have either a Dark Law, or say it's later in the game, you have an Anki, so you could swing for a direct attack. So this card really does come up a lot, and it's one of your main facilitators, because if you have that and you don't burn your normal summon, you can just continue to combo off. Next up is Dark Calling. Fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck that must be fusion with Dark Fusion by banishing the fusion materials listed from your hand or graveyard. And this is treated as a fusion summon with Dark Fusion. So like I said before, this is just used to bring out Malicious Bane because this monster is ridiculous, but we'll get to that. The next card is one copy of Feather Duster because you don't want to face off against control decks. That's why you main deck this. And if you look into the side deck, which I know has been on the screen the whole time, you have triple copies of Twin Twister, so there's that as well. One copy of Polymerization just for a couple of the lesser, not lesser, but you know, some of the other fusions. You have things like Absolute Zero, Trinity, Sunrise. Theoretically, you could even use Dangerous and Dystopia using Poly, but you don't really want to because you have the Fusion Destiny engine. But yeah, this is typically for your elemental heroes and Trinity. Sorry. Next up is Reinforcement of the Army, the best card for every warrior deck, and I wish it was still at 3, but you know, it is what it is. Next up is Miracle Fusion. Fusion summon one elemental hero fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing the fusion materials listed on it from your field or graveyard. This card got so much better with the introduction of Sunrise because he searches it. But that's amazing because it's like a Fright for a Fusion, or actually it's the precursor to Fright for a Fusion. Let me not disrespect the hero deck. Moving on. Next up is 3 copies of Fusion Destiny. So this could be 2. I typically wouldn't put it any less than 2, but this could easily be 2. It lets you fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck that lists Destiny hero monsters as its material, using monsters in your hand or deck as fusion material, but destroy it during the end phase of the next turn. Also, for the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters except Dark Hero monsters. So you have to be sure that you're done using your Stratos, you're done using your Liquid, that you don't want to fusion, that you don't want to special summon Absolute Zero or anything like that, because this card will lock you out, or lock you specifically into Darks. But again, if you look, Malicious Bane is Dark, Dystopia is Dark, Anki's Dark. Trinity is Dark, Dark Law obviously, Dangerous, then you have Decimator, Dread Decimator, then you have Cross Crusader. So it's really not that big of a lockout, and most of your main deck is also Dark as well, but there are some key components that will be locked out, so you have to do them before you use Fusion Destiny. And then to round it out, we have Mask Change at 3, because this card is amazing. Now, moving on to the extra deck, we have Malicious Bane. It takes one evil hero and one level 5 or higher monster. That could be any level 5 or higher monster. That could be Plasma. That could be Honest Neos. That could be Malicious. You know, like. So it's not like in the main deck. It doesn't look like there's that many options, but you have 3 copies of Ferris. Everything up until here. So you have, 7 copies of cards that you could just use as the material for him. So it works out. And then also the extra deck monsters count as well. So he's really not hard to go into at all. But he cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects, which is excellent protection for this card. But it's important to note that cards that don't destroy but send will get rid of him. Also, cards that return him to the hand, and he can still be targeted. But that's important. So during your main phase, you can destroy all monsters your opponent controls with attack less than or equal to this card. He's at 3,000, 3,000 by the way. Also, this card gains 200 attack for each monster destroyed this way. Also, you cannot declare an attack for the rest of the turn except with hero monsters. That literally does not matter. As you can see, the only cards that are not hero monsters are Ash and Ghost Ogre. So, those didn't matter anyway. But yeah, so it still lets you completely blow up their board and swing in for game, and he even gains attack off of the destruction, which is amazing. The only thing is you can only use this effect of him once per turn. It's a hard once per turn. Excellent card, very pricey, so if you can't afford this, like I said, what I would do is either type in the put in the third what is the third Destiny Hero Fusion? I'm pretty sure it is. Matter of fact, let's look it up. If you can't afford him, you could either use Dominance or Dusktopia. I don't really recommend Dusktopia, but Dominance is fine. You know, it's fine. But again, this one is actually much better. So let's go ahead and. So the next card is Dystopia. You typically, if you go into him, you're using him for the burn damage, because then you can use Celestial as part of his material off of Fusion Destiny and burn the opponent for 1,600. There's not really much else for him. It's just a way of facilitating a Malicious into the graveyard and then getting some cheeky burn damage. Next up is Anki. He's a mass change target that can attack directly. Also, if he destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can add one change quick play spell from your deck to your hand. That's a really good effect. He doesn't really come up too much unless you really just need 1,400 damage to close out the game, because when he attacks to his direct attack effect, it halves the battle damage. Next up is Mass Hero Acid. So you can only bring him out with Mass Change, and that's all of the Mass Heroes. But when this card is special summoned, destroy as many spell and traps your opponent controls as possible, and if you do, all monsters they control lose 300 attack. Often you'll catch him in the combo with Absolute Zero and Acid, so the attack reduction doesn't really come up. But if you don't do that, then it's great, because then you're facing down a bunch of weakened board that you can easily swing over. Next up is Absolute Zero. He takes one hero and one water monster to make. He must be fusion summoned. You gain 500 attack for each water monster on the field, except Absolute Zero. That comes up sometimes. So if you're playing something like Necroz, they'll actually end up buffing him. But if this card leaves the field, destroy all monsters your opponent controls. That's a very good board wipe, because it doesn't target. However, it does destroy. I wish it said send, but you know, you can't really nitpick a Raigeki, you know. Next up, we have Vision Hero Trinity. After this card is fusion summoned, for the rest of this turn, this card's attack becomes double its original attack, and this fusion summoned card can make a second and third attack during each battle phase, but it cannot attack directly. This card is excellent. It goes up to 5,000, and oftentimes what Max will do, he'll use Honest Neos and just swing over a board of 3 monsters for game, because then he's at 7,500. It's really cheeky and it's prone to negation, but it is a very good card, and it's a very good OTK enabler as well. Except if they have less, like I said, if they have less than 3 monsters, because then he can't attack directly. Next up is Sunrise, who's a an amazing card for this deck. They really needed this. 2 hero monsters with different attributes, so that could be any two. It could be a Stratos and a Liquid. It could be Stratos, and again, like I said, it's any 2 hero monsters. So it's not just elemental. It could be Vision or Destiny, or Mask even. So monsters you control gain 200 for each different attribute you control. You can only use each of the following effects of Sunrise once per turn. If this card is special summon, you can add 1 Miracle Fusion from your deck to your hand. So like I said before, he's a searcher for Miracle Fusion, which helps you add another hero monster to the board while he's there. And then when an attack is declared involving another hero monster you control, you can target 1 card on the field and destroy it. So at minimum, there's going to be 2 hero monsters on board when you have him because of the Miracle Fusion search. And what you can go ahead and do is declare an attack with the other one. Say it's an Absolute Zero. So Absolute Zero declares an attack, and then using Sunrise's effect, you can pop the second monster so that your next attack will just be a direct attack. So that's so strong. Yeah. There's not much else to say about it, but yeah, so that attack gain also comes up as well. It helps heroes OTK. Next up is Dark Law. Dark Law banishes any card that would be sent to the opponent's graveyard. Like I said, it's a Macrocosmos. So instead of going to the graveyard, it's banished instead. And then once per turn, if your opponent adds a card to their hand, except during their draw phase or the damage step, you can just banish 1 random card from your opponent's hand. So if they only have say they have no cards in hand, but they add something to their hand off of a search, you can just rip it out of their hand. It doesn't even matter. But if they have 2, it's a 50-50, and so on and so forth. Dark Law is a staple of hero decks, and I would never run him at less than 2. But I can see how 3 could be too much. Next up, like I said before, is Master of Blast. I'm not really going to cover him too much. It's really if you just need more damage instead of the Stratos. Now you have Dangerous. Again, typically I prefer to go into Dystopia, but Dangerous is fine. It takes 1 Destiny hero and 1 Dark Effect monster. You can discard, so he's a regular polymerization target. If you're stuck with a Vion or really anything that's dark that you don't want stuck on board, you could just poly into him. It's not optimal, but it's fine. Dread Decimator comes up a lot. He takes 2+ hero monsters. He's a Link 3. This card, also any hero monsters it points to, gain 100 attack for each hero monster with different names in your graveyard. So him alongside Sunrise just add these staggering attack boosts to your monsters. And if this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage, that doesn't really matter. For a long time, this was a really bad card, but now that Sunrise is out and you just want to be an OTK machine, this card is excellent. You have Wonder Driver. He takes 2 hero monsters to make. If a hero monster is normal or special summoned to the zone this card points to, target 1 polymerization, 1 fusion spell card, or 1 change quick play spell in your graveyard, and then you could just set that target. It's excellent recurrence for your cards that you say your opponent banishes a copy or 2 of your mass change, or you just need another poly, or Miracle Fusion even. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure he even gets Fusion Destiny, but he doesn't get Dark Calling. But yeah. So with being able to recur those cards, it helps with the longevity of this deck. It's not a grind deck. I'm never going to say that, but it does help grind out a little bit. Also, if this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, or if this card in your possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon 1 hero monster from your hand. So sometimes that comes up. It doesn't really all the time, but it does come up sometimes. And last but not least, we have Extra Hero Cross Crusader. If this card is link summoned, you can target 1 Destiny hero monster in your graveyard, special summon it. You contribute 1 Destiny hero monster, add a hero monster with a different name from your deck to your hand. So this makes Plasma searchable. This makes Malicious searchable. and not that they weren't already, but it really does help like set up these boards and helps you feel like there's more than 2 copies of Malicious with each copy of Cross Crusader. So that's why I run 2 Cross Crusader. You can only use each effect of Cross Crusader once per turn. Also, you cannot special summon monsters the turn you activate either effect of this card, except hero monsters, which again is not a lockout. Now, to run into the side deck really quick before this video gets too long, we have 3 copies of Super Poly, just because, you know, heroes are the quintessential deck, maybe behind Shadal's, to abuse different attributes, and to go alongside those copies of Super Poly, you have 1 copy of each of the elemental hero Super Poly targets. Gaia for Earth, Escuridao for Dark, The Shining for Light, Nova Master for Fire, and Great Tornado for Wind. I have to say Great Tornado has been coming up more and more because of the Wind Barrier statue in Tri-Brigade. So him being sided in between games, he comes up a lot. 3 copies of Twin Twister because spell and trap removal is necessary, and I don't know why combo players don't run it more. And then lastly, we have 3 copies of Gamma and 1 copy of Driver, just if you don't want to run the copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, or if you just need to side out a copy of Fusion Destiny or something, depending on your matchup. But that about wraps it up for today. Thank you guys very much for your support on the other deck profile, and if you haven't seen that, go and check it out. It's Zombie World. And if you want to see more Yu-Gi-Oh content, or like if you want to see some more of our decks, just leave a like down below, and don't be afraid to subscribe to the channel because we hope to have more Yu-Gi-Oh content coming at you real soon. Catch you guys on the next one.